She's been the best hostess I've ever had. She's just been terrific, and you have just made this trip so wonderful. Thank you. Happy birthday. Thanks for letting me share your birthday with you today. That's just so cool, Beth. Thanks. I'd like to thank Dave for inviting me to come and share, and the whole convention committee. You know, I don't know if you know what it takes to put on a convention, but it's a lot of work, and these people spend a whole year committed to putting on this event for us. And you know, I've heard it said there's players and there's fans. You know, and the players are the ones who show up every month and plan this and put this event together, and then it gets down to the wire, and they create this whole environment and arena for us fans to be able to come in and enjoy it. And I would just like to give the whole convention committee and the chair people and all of the volunteers and everybody a round of applause, because they've done a wonderful job. Thank you. I don't know if I was born an alcoholic, but I know that from my first drink, an alcoholic was born. I picked up my first drink of alcohol at the age of 11, and for me, it was magic. I didn't come from a home where there was alcohol. I came from a very religious home where the belief system is, if you are good, God will love you and grace you, and if you are bad, God will punish you. You know, my parents didn't smoke, they didn't drink, they didn't beat us. I wasn't born in a war zone. You know, my parents were well educated, they had jobs, we were very middle class, and to the outside everything looked very normal. And you know, but there was something that was a little bit different about me. And Johnny was talking about it last night. There was this piece of me that was irritable and discontent and always looking for something more, always looking outside of myself for something more. I'm not only an alcoholic, I am an adult that grew up as a molested child, and I do talk about that, not because it has to do with my disease of alcoholism, but it has everything to do with how I felt about myself when I was growing up. Because I grew up feeling dirty and ashamed and guilty and confused and angry, and I did not understand what was happening to me. And I thought there must be something very, very wrong with me and that God was punishing me. But I couldn't figure out what I had done at 5 years old that was so bad that God would want to punish me like that. And I grew up hating God. I thought God hated me, and I hated God. You know, and that was a struggle in my life the whole time. And then I picked up my first drink of alcohol, and it was magic. And all of a sudden I was funny enough and pretty enough and smart enough. And I didn't care, and it allowed me to do things that I wanted to do, but didn't have the freedom to do without that drink. I believe that alcohol saved my life long enough to get to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, because I tried suicide attempts starting at age 15. Life hurt, and I wanted out. I just wanted out. I looked at the rest of my family, I looked at the rest of the world, and it seemed like everybody knew how to operate in the world. And I felt like there was something missing with me, because I didn't know how to do this. I always felt like I was one step behind or one step off or very different. In my whole life I grew up, I just wanted to be normal, whatever that was. I just wanted to feel like I fit in, like I was a part of. And I always felt less than and inadequate and different. I kept thinking that tomorrow it's going to be different. Tomorrow it'll be okay. Tomorrow everything will fall into place and it'll be all right. And I spent every day thinking that tomorrow was going to be different. I was a type of person that when I drank, I blacked out. I was a mean and nasty, violent bitch when I drank. And I was not one that you wanted to be around. I was not one of those happy-go-lucky kinds of people that you'd sit and buddy up to the bar with. It was like once I started drinking, people that knew me just got away. They knew. There's a song that... Don't ask her on a straight tequila night, you know, to dance, you know. Yeah, that was me. Don't ask me on a straight tequila night. You know, you're likely to get your lights punched out. And all I wanted to be was a nice girl, you know. And when I got to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, I was at that point in my life where I had the house, the car, the clothes, the jobs. I had a Mr. Wonderful. He was beating me up on a regular basis, but I thought I deserved it, so that was okay with me. It was all I understood. And he just reinforced how I felt about myself. And I had all of those outside things that for a long time represented to me that I was okay. I must be okay. I have all this stuff. And what was happening is I was dying inside. I was dying inside, and I didn't know what was wrong with me. I thought that I couldn't stop drinking because I was too stupid, or I'd told too many lies, or I'd ripped too many people off, or that God just hated me, and that's why I couldn't stop drinking. And I got to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, and you told me that I had a disease. I didn't know that. And you said, "You know what that means, Margaret?" And I said, "No." You said, "You're allergic to alcohol. Some people are allergic to chocolate. Some people are allergic to strawberries. They eat chocolate and strawberries and they break out into a rash. You're allergic to alcohol. You take alcohol, you break out too. You break out into assholism. I understood that. I knew that once I started, I couldn't stop. I could not guarantee my behavior, and I could not guarantee what I was going to do once I started. I understood that I was so grateful to hear that I had a disease. And I heard that I don't ever have to pick up another drink as long as I live, one day at a time. And I know that I've heard people that say that just scared the bazoobies out of them, And I got to tell you, I was so grateful to hear that. I was so grateful to know that there was a solution to the insanity and the hell that I lived in inside of myself. It wasn't about what was out there. It was about what was inside of me and the way I felt and the way I thought and the way that I behaved. And I wanted out of that insanity. And I got to these rooms and you people told me that I don't have to pick up a drink ever again, one day at a time. You said things like, go to 90 meetings in 90 days and don't pick up a drink in between. And I thought, okay, I can do that. He said, get a big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and read it, because the program's contained within the first 164 pages of that book. And I thought, okay, I can do that. You said, get a sponsor, because when you stop drinking, feelings are going to come up and you're going to need somebody to talk to. And I thought, okay, I can do that. You said, work the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous because that's the key to your recovery. And I thought, okay, I can do that. I didn't know what that meant. But I was so willing to do whatever you told me to do. It didn't matter. And then you mentioned the word God. I thought, oh, shit. I don't do God. I'm not going to talk to God. You tell me I have to turn my will and my life over to the care of this power greater than myself. You call it God. I'm not talking to God. I start talking to God, he's going to know where I am and he's going to get me. Not me. What I did do is I got a sponsor, and my first sponsor was a kindergarten teacher. And she gave me what she called Sandbox AA. She just kept it really simple for me. She used to have me come over to her house, and she would just talk to me. She would talk to me about her God, and she told me the coolest things. She told me that her God was warm and kind and loving and sharing and caring and giving and was the creator of all beauty and had a sense of humor, and he was the spirit of the universe. And I'd never heard anybody talk about God like that before. You know what she told me? She told me I could borrow her God if I wanted to. I had no clue you could do things like that, And I started my early recovery as my sponsor understood God. And I'd go through my day and I'd get home and I'd call her up and I'd go, well, what do you think God would think about that? And she'd say, Margaret, don't drink, don't take anything, and keep coming back. We love you, honey. And I thought, okay, I can do this. And what my sponsor did for me is she started me off very early in my recovery through the journey of the 12 steps. And I believe that it was the foundation that I got in this program based on the 12 steps and the 12 traditions. That is the reason that I am here today. What she did is she taught me the principles behind the step, and in the first step she taught me about honesty. And the truth is that I didn't know how to live without a drink or a drug. I didn't know how to get up and go through the day without taking something to change how I felt or to alter what was going on inside of me. I didn't know how to do that. I had lost the ability to be honest with you because I had lost the ability to be honest with myself. My life had become such an illusion that I could no longer distinguish the reality from the lies. I didn't know what was real anymore. I told so many lies to survive out there that they became the truth for me. In the second step, my sponsor taught me about hope. And what she gave me was the gift of her God. And little by little, she would talk to me about God. And I went to this meeting I got sober in San Jose, California, and I came into a recovery community where it didn't matter what you called yourself, it didn't matter what label, it didn't matter what you said or anything else. People didn't say, you're not welcome here, or you can't say that, or anything else. I came into a recovery community where everybody played together, everybody recovered together, and if somebody was in that room, they were welcome. They were welcome. And I'm grateful that I came into a recovery community like that. And I was at this meeting in Scotts Valley at this place called Star Lodge Hospital, and I was pretty new in recovery, and I'm sitting there, and this guy goes, watch what you pray for, because you just might get it. He said, I prayed for my wife to come back, and all three of them did. I was scared. That scared the bazoobies out of me. It did. I was freaked out. I went home. I called my sponsor. I'm like, oh my God, what do you pray for? What do you don't pray for? I don't know what to pray for, you know? And I'm like, this guy said, watch what you pray for. All three of his wives came back. What do you pray for? What do you not pray for? And I'm like freaking out. And my sponsor says, Margaret. She said, if you had a child and that child asked you for a book of matches, knowing that that child was going to hurt themselves, would you give them the matches? And I said, no, of course I wouldn't. And she said, well, I believe that God's the same way. And it doesn't really matter what you're asking for. The point is that you're talking to God. And in the second step, my sponsor gave me the hope that there was a power greater than myself that could restore me to sanity. And what she taught me is that every time I walk into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous and I see somebody else that's in that room who's trying to recover, I know that I am not alone. She gave me the gift of the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous in that second step, and the hope that I too could make it, that I had a place to go. When I had 6 months of recovery, the guy that I lived with destroyed everything that I owned. He took a knife to all of my clothes, all of my furniture. He spray painted the whole apartment. All of the things that I had were destroyed. I had one box of paperback books and some bent up pots and pans. And I didn't get it. I thought, nice God you guys gave me. Come into these rooms, I start to believe in a power greater than myself, and everything I own gets destroyed. And I think I probably learned one of the most powerful lessons of my recovery. And I learned that I did not have to pick up a drink. And I didn't have to take anything. And I learned that there were rooms that I could come to and people that I could share my confusion and my anger and my fear with. And what you said to me is, Margaret, don't drink, don't take anything, and keep coming back. We love you, honey. In the third step, my sponsor taught me about faith, and for me it's a blind faith. It's standing on the edge and understanding that if I leap, if I have that leap of courage, if I have that leap of faith, it'll be God's breath beneath my wings that keeps me up. In the fourth step, my sponsor taught me about courage, and she taught me that this is a program where we uncover, we discover, and we discard. When I had almost a year of recovery, people kept telling me, oh, try new and different things. So I got married, you know? I just knew it was God's will for me, you know? I did. I just knew it. I was at a dance. I was at a recovery dance. I was coming up on a year, you know? I was doing everything that I was supposed to be doing. I was where I was supposed to be. And I'm in this dance, and he walks in from the other side of the room, you know? And I see him. The minute he walks in, our eyes meet. And he's got this little cowboy hat on and this little gap between his teeth, you know, and he walks right straight to me, you know, and he asks me to dance. And it was a slow dance. And he takes me in his arms, and the poor guy was shaking like a leaf. And I thought, he needs me. Fell in love right there on the dance floor. Just knew it was God's will. God just put him in my arms, you know, and well, I did wait 5 weeks before I got married. I thought that was a really long time. And I didn't tell anybody I was going to get married. I eloped. I went to Tahoe, and I came back to my home group on a Monday night and stood up and said, guess what I did over the weekend? I got married. And everybody in the room just looked at me and they shook their heads and they went, Margaret, don't drink. Don't take anything and keep coming back. We love you, honey. And I was so glad they said that, because about 5 weeks after I got married, I was going nuts. I was stark, raving, sober, lunatic nuts. And I was kicking my dog, and I was throwing the cat against the wall, and I was screaming at my husband because nothing he did was right. And I went to a meeting and said, I don't get it. I'm doing the deal. I'm doing everything I'm supposed to be doing. And if there's anybody who's new here and you're thinking there's some secret to Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm going to tell you what I think that is. I believe this is the deal. You go to, well, number one, you don't drink. You go to meetings on a regularly scheduled basis. You get a sponsor. You work the steps with that sponsor. You write and you share and you become of service. That's the deal. That's it. That's the secret of Alcoholics Anonymous. You do those things. And I was doing those things. And I thought I was supposed to be happy and joyous and free. And I flipping wanted to kill. And I didn't get it. And I stood up and I said, if this is sobriety, I don't want it. I didn't get sober to be miserable, for God's sake. What is going on here? I don't get it. That was the day that I began to believe in the Father, the Son, and the Holy Coincidence. Because my sponsor was at that meeting, and she heard me stand up and say, if this is sobriety, I don't want it. This is miserable. I'm doing everything I'm supposed to be doing, and I am not happy, I am not joyous, and I am not free. And she took me outside and she said, I want you to write. I just want you to go home and write. She said, I don't want you doing another 4-step. Oh, I was doing 4 steps. I was doing 4 steps on my husband. I was doing 4 steps on my marriage. I was doing 4 steps on the flippin' dog. I was working the steps. And she said, I just want you to go home and write. And what happened is I did that. I went home and I wrote. And what came up for me is all of the rage and all of the anger from growing up as a molested child. And when I shared all of that with my sponsor, what she said is that alcohol is just a symptom of what the real problems are. And she said, if I don't deal with the real problems, I'm not going to be able to stay sober. And she said, if I manage to not pick up a drink, I'm not going to have any serenity in my sobriety. She said, Margaret, you will always be an alcoholic, but you can recover from being a molested child. And what she taught me is that you take the 12 steps of this program as a foundation and you do life. I don't live in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. I live on Reality Boulevard. And that's where I need the steps, and that's where I need to take God, and that's where I need to take these traditions, is out there in life. And she said, you take them as a foundation. You make them a part of who and what you are, and you live life based in the principles of this program. And she taught me that I could go to another program that dealt specifically with the issues of growing up as a molested child. There's a lot of debate between therapy and meetings, and therapy and sponsorship, and therapy and steps. And you know what? There was no debate for me. I went to therapy twice a week for a year and a half, and what I did was I worked a 4th and 5th step twice a week for a year and a half with a therapist. And what I learned in that arena was positive and constructive ways of dealing with my anger, and they taught me to beat up pillows with tennis rackets. Now, I felt stupid beating up pillows with tennis rackets. I didn't like it. It was uncomfortable, didn't want to do it. But what I did is I found out that when I would beat up the pillows with tennis rackets, I didn't kick the dog or throw the cat so much. Now, I always yelled at my husband because nothing he did was right, and what I understand is at that point in my recovery, I was nothing but a shit magnet, and there he walked through the door right at me, just boom, shit magnet, and thank God something's changed. And I got to learn about feelings, and I got to learn that through anger I gained strength. You know, through pain, I learn about healing. Through fear, I learn about wisdom. Through shame, I learn about humility. And through guilt, I learn about values. You know, everybody's so afraid of fear. Fear, fear, fear. Everybody's so afraid of fear. You know, my best friend once sat in a meeting and she said, you know, this whole thing about fear is, she said, you know what? I brush my teeth because I'm afraid if I don't, they're going to rot and fall out. And she said, I don't rob banks because I'm afraid I'll get caught and thrown in jail. And she said, I don't pick up a drink because I'm afraid of what's going to happen if I pick up the first one. And she said, consequently, as a result of my fear, I'm not sitting in jail for bank robbery drunk with no teeth. You know, fear isn't always that bad. It teaches us wisdom, you know, and I learned about feelings, and I learned that all my feelings are God-given and therefore good. You know, it's just what I do with them. It's how I express them and how I operate in those feelings that determines whether I perceive them as being good or bad. You know, and I learned how to release that anger. I learned to beat up pillows with tennis rackets. I set them on fire, and you know, I think people in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous might have had a little bit of trouble with me ripping up phone books and setting them on fire at the podium. I mean, I don't know. Maybe you would have liked it, but maybe not. You know, and what I learned is that's what it took for me to be able to let go of that anger and that rage, and it's what it took for cleaning that wound out. You know, and I believe that we walk in here and we have wounds. We have wounds from life. We have wounds that we've inflicted upon ourselves. We have wounds that people have inflicted on us. And we walk in here and we're wounded. And through the process of these 12 steps, we get to heal those wounds. We get to clean them out. You know, we have to clean out those wounds, and we uncover and we discover and we discard, you know, and what I know is that the more garbage I get out, the more room there is for God's love to come and fill me up, you know, and I used to just cry all the time, and I thought there was something seriously wrong with me, and I would just cry and cry and cry, and people kept telling me, you know, that every time I cried, God was removing something from me that I didn't need anymore, and you called it spiritual surgery. You know, and you said, get the garbage out. Let God's love come and fill me up. And I used to just pray. I would pray and I would cry and I would say, God, please come fill me up. Please come fill me up, you know. And I didn't understand what it meant to turn my will and my life over to the care of God. I just didn't understand that. And so people said, Margaret, just turn your thoughts and your actions over to God. You know, and I used to always feel like I was in a struggle with God. I'm with my will, you know, like I'm in this tug of war with God. I turn it over, I take it back. I turn it over, I take it back, you know, and I was playing with this dog one time who had a tug toy, you know, and I'm playing with the dog, and the dog's pulling, and I'm pulling, you know, and I thought, oh my God, that's God and me and my will, you know, and I'm in a tug of war with God, you know, and I go to battle with God, you know, and I want to hang on to all my stuff, you know, and I have this little sword, and God removes the sword, you know, and I've got my little shield, and I'm still fighting with God, you know, and keeping my will, and God removes the shield for me, and it's like, oh, but wait, I have a butter knife in my boot, you know, and I'm fighting with God, you know, and I'm always in this struggle with God about my will, you know, and somebody said, just turn your thoughts and actions over to him, and it was like, oh, okay, I can do that, you know, and I would cry all the time, and I learned to wear tea rose perfume to remind myself that, you know what, this isn't shit, it's fertilizer. You know, it's just fertilizer, and the tears are going to water me, and as long as I don't pick up a drink, I'm going to come out smelling like a rose on the other side, you know? And it's the courage of the fourth step that allows us to open those wounds up and to clean them out and to heal from the inside out, you know? And in the fifth step, they taught me about integrity. And once I share the secret with you, I don't have to be afraid. There is a promise that I will be able to look you in the eye, you know? I'm not afraid of you anymore. When I tell the truth, I don't have to be afraid. In the sixth step, they taught me about willingness, and it was a willingness to look at my part of the action. Where had I been selfish, self-seeking, dishonest, manipulative? Where had I aroused suspicion and jealousy and done harm? That's what I had to look at in the sixth step, and I didn't like that because, you know, when I started out at 5 years old as a victim, but it didn't take me very long to become a volunteer. And that's what I had to own in the sixth step. And I had to understand that it was my fear that had motivated me through life and put me in the position where I had been beat up every time because I placed myself in that position. And it was my fear that I was either not going to get something I needed or that you were going to take something away from me that I thought I had that ran my life. And I had to own that. I had to look at that in the sixth step and be willing to look at my part of the action. And in the seventh step, my sponsor taught me about being humble. It wasn't about being humiliated. It wasn't about anything else. I had to look up words in the dictionary. You know, my sponsor encouraged me to learn. If I didn't understand a word, look it up in the dictionary. There's no shame in that. She never made me feel inadequate or less than for not knowing something. What she did is she encouraged me to learn. She said, you need to know what these words mean. You need to know what this program is about. This is what's going to save your life. If you don't know a word, honey, look it up. It's okay. It needs to make sense to me. You know, in the seventh step, it was just about asking God to come and remove those character defects and those shortcomings. It doesn't say anywhere in the seventh step that Margaret humbly removed her shortcomings. It doesn't happen. And I thought, in all my newcomer wisdom at the time, that once I asked for all my defects of character to be removed, that they would. I thought they'd just be gone. And that didn't happen, and I was pretty pissed off about it, you know, because I would ask for jealousy to be removed, and instead of, you know, walking through life wonderfully, all of a sudden I would find myself like this green meanie monster, just jealous as all can be, you know, and what I found is that with all of the character defects that I asked God to remove, they got placed right in my face. And I thought, well, it's not supposed to be this way. You know, I had this illusion about what I thought Alcoholics Anonymous was like. I had this illusion about what I thought Working Steps was like and what it was going to produce and what was going to happen, and it isn't anything like what I thought it was. Damn it, you know? I had this great plan for myself, and it wasn't happening, you know? And what I learned is that it's about God's time and not my time. You know, I learned that the way that I came to have an understanding of God is that I was told that it's my job to align my will with God's will. And I have this picture of God, and God's just God. God's wonderful, and God's over here loving and taking care of the universe the way God does. And I'm usually over here dinking around, you know, because that's what I do. I dink, and every once in a while, you know, I get in the zone, and I'm in the zone. I'm in the God zone. You know what that feels like, to be in the God zone? You know, you're there, and it's happening, and it's clicking, and it's good, and it's wonderful, you know, and you're in the God zone. And, you know, before too long, I'm still over here, and I'm dinking around again, you know, and I'm going, hey, where did God go? You know, and it's like, I don't believe that God's going, get back here, get back here, get back here. I believe that God's just going, Margaret. Oh, yeah, okay, here I am, back in the zone again. You know, all right, cool, I'm there. Before I know it, I'm dinking around again, and Margaret, I love you. Oh, okay, here I am again, you know, and I believe that it's just about aligning my will with God's will. And God's not trying to beat me upside the head with a 2x4 to get my attention, you know, and God's not making me sick to slow me down. And God's just loving me, you know. And I ended up getting divorced because my husband chose to use. And you know what? I could not live with somebody that was using. And I never figured out if I wasn't well enough to live with somebody that was using or if I wasn't sick enough to live with somebody that was using. I don't know. I just know that, you know what, my sobriety had to come first, and it had to come before marriages and husbands and family and anything else. And they told me that if I wasn't staying sober for me, that I wasn't going to be able to stay sober. You know, and then I had to learn how to date and not have sex. That was very hard. That was very hard. You know, when people start having sex with you when you're 5 years old, you do not grow up having a normal sex life. You know, you just don't. And it doesn't matter how long I'm sober, I still didn't grow up having a normal sex life. And I had to learn new behaviors. I had to learn how to operate within the boundaries of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous and within the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And you know what, I learned these little things that worked for me, and I call it the don't shave your legs theory. You know, will not sleep with somebody for the first time with unshaved legs. I have my standards, you know? And I would just make sure that if I was going to a dance, I wouldn't shave my legs, you know? I just would not shave my legs. And I had hairy legs for a very, very long time. I could shave them through the week, you know, but then when it came to the weekend, oh, don't pick up the razor, you know, and I started having this 4-step workshop at my house, you know, and there was a guy who came and he was doing the deal, you know, and I was doing the deal, and he had a motorcycle, and he was really cute, and he asked me out, and I thought, okay, I can go out, and I did this thing where I'd put people on 50 hours, and I would tell men that if they wanted to go out with me, that was great. I don't think so. And I thought, that's exactly what I wanted to know. I wanted to know who you were and how you wanted to show up in my life, and that was my way of doing it. And some people didn't want to show up in my life, and some people did. And this guy asked me out, and our first date was on Mother's Day. And I got on the back of his motorcycle, and he took me to meet his grandmother. And I thought, aw, how sweet is that? You know, our first date, he takes me to meet his grandmother, you know, and I was like, oh, nobody had ever done that before. And after we visited with Grandma, you know, and we went out to Coyote Lake, and the sun was setting, and we were there, and it was all romantic, and, well, I gave him a blowjob right there, you know, and it was like you know. And we ended up staying together for 4 years, so it wasn't just a blow in the night kind of a thing, you know, and it had purpose and meaning behind it, and the gift was that I found out, you know, it was the first time in my life that I had a relationship with a man, and we didn't attack each other's self-esteem or ego. We didn't tear each other down. You know, we didn't call each other names or hurt each other in that way. And it was the first time in my life that I found out that I could have a warm and kind and loving relationship with a man. And that was new for me. And I was so grateful to know that I could operate in that way and that I could allow somebody to love me in that way, you know. And it was wonderful. And you know what, I 3 years, you know, and I decided to go back in school. I think that we kind of cycle when we come in here, you know, and usually about 3 years, when you have about 3 years, you know, you're getting a little steady on your feet, you know, and a little bit confident in yourself about staying sober. And a lot of us who aren't committed to a certain career go back to school, you know, and a lot of us want to become, I don't know, chemical dependency counselors and save the world and things like that, you know, and I thought that I wanted to do that, and then I interviewed a lot of counselors, and they had a high relapse rate, and I had an understanding that I wouldn't make a very good chemical dependency counselor, you know, I just didn't have very good boundaries, and my stepmother said, Margaret, you've always liked to play more than you've liked to work, so I started going to school to be a recreational therapist and get a degree in developmental disabilities, you know, so they would pay me to play and make Jell-O, you know, and so I started going to school. In my first quarter, I took 10 units, and I passed with straight A's. I got a report card in the mail, and it said grade point average 4.0. You know, you're looking at a woman who grew up thinking her IQ was 4.0. You know, it was incredible to know that I could go to school and I could learn, and I loved being in school, and I loved being a non-traditional student, you know, and because I was in my 30s at that point, you know, and all these young kids were in school just fresh out of high school, and, you know, it was great. I loved learning, and you know, I'm a good alcoholic, and I thought, well, if a little is good, more's got to be better. So in my second quarter, I went from 10 units to 16 units, you know, and I was doing hair and nails out of my house, and I was living with this guy, and life seemed to be wonderful, and it was, I mean, I was in the zone, you know, I was just in the zone, and life was clicking, and it was happening, and I was Ms. AA, and I was sponsoring all these women, and life was wonderful. It was better than it had ever been in my whole life, and I had the answers, and I would be so happy to share them with you if you would just listen to me long enough, you know, if I could capture you. I mean, if I could just be with you for a few minutes, you know, I'd be happy to tell you everything that's wrong with you, and, you know, I was very helpful in people with their 4 steps. You know, I would kind of like help them do it. And I got to that point in life where I kind of used, well, I don't know, steps and traditions as clubs to beat people, you know, and I kind of got to that point in my life where in order to see myself as spiritual, I had to view you as being not spiritual, you know, and in order to look at me as being smart, I had to look at you as not being smart, and I got into that space where I was going to school and I was getting overwhelmed, and my guy came to me and he said, Margaret, I really love you, but in a few months I'm going to take off in the summer and I'm going to go on my motorcycle with my best friend cross country, and I'm not sure I'm coming back. And what happened is in the areas of jobs and school and finances and relationships, I started getting overwhelmed. And I was coming up on 4 years of recovery at that point, and you know what? It was the first time in my sobriety that I lost hope. And I couldn't go to meetings and I couldn't tell you that because I was too embarrassed. What would you think of me? I'm Ms. AA, for God's sake. I can't go and tell you that I'm getting all overwhelmed with life and that I don't have the answers and that I'm feeling like I want to die. You know, and I sat on the steps of a dentist's office next to my house one night and I thought about taking a drink. And there was this woman walking down the road and she was drunk and she was staggering and she was slurring and she was ugly. She was ugly. This woman was ugly. And I knew that if I picked up a drink, I was going to look like her, and I did not want to look like her. And the only solution that I could come up with at that time is that I wanted to die. I wanted to kill myself. I had no hope. And I felt despair and isolation. And I was scared. And I wanted to die. I just wanted to die. And I learned in this program that you pick up a phone, not a drink, and I called my sponsor and I told her that I had no hope and I wanted to die. And she said, Margaret, please, don't drink, don't take anything, and keep coming back. We love you, honey. She said, just make it to the next meeting. Just please make it to the next meeting. My sponsor ended up calling suicide prevention, and they called me twice. And you know, the truth is that I'd come to the answer. I'd come to the solution because this program teaches me about solutions. And the only thing was that it also taught me to be responsible. So there was a few things that I had to do before I could kill myself, you know, and I needed to make out a will, and I needed to take out a life insurance policy, and I needed to clean up all of the things in my house so that nobody would have to deal with them after I was gone. And then I had to figure out how I could kill myself and make it look like an accident so the life insurance policy would pay off so my boyfriend would, and I had to do all this appropriately, of course, you know, because that's what AA teaches you, be responsible. And you know, even in death, I was going to be responsible, and so I figured that I had to make sure that the dog was taken care of. So I was going to take the dog over to my girlfriend's house in Stockton. I was going to go across Altamont Pass, which is a little mountain ridge, and I was going to go late at night, and I was going to run my car off a cliff. You know, I thought, well, it would just look like I fell asleep at the wheel and ran off the cliff. I'm dead. You know, the dog's taken care of. The guy gets the money. He has a great trip, and Shana, there we are, you know. And what happened is that on my 4-year birthday that year, it happened to fall on Easter Sunday, and I took my car over to the restaurant where my boyfriend worked, and I got on the back of his motorcycle, and we went to the bike blessing that they have in San Jose every year on Easter Sunday. It's millions of motorcycles ride by, some guy throws water on you, somebody hands you a car, you're blessed, voila, there you go, on and on, Shana. So I go get blessed, and I go back to pick up my car, and all 4 of my tires have been slashed. And I thought, God really does have a sense of humor, doesn't he? And I'm thinking, not to worry, just put on retreads. You know, this puppy's going off a cliff in 3 weeks. You know, I'm put $5 retreads, $20, I'm back on the road, 3 weeks, I'm off the cliff. This is all going to work out. You know, I've got it going on here. You know, I'm determined. I'm going to do this. You know, I'm going to kill myself, and I'm going to do it right, God damn it. You know, and what happened is that my boyfriend wouldn't let me put retreads on the car. He says, you're traveling too far to and from school. You cannot put retreads on the car, you know. And what I learned at that point is that God will not remove character defects as long as they work for you. because what happened is greed kicked in. And I thought, I'll be goddamned if I'm going to go run this car off a cliff. I just spent $200 on tires. I thought, I have 40,000 miles to go. I better get a job, you know? And the really sad part about that whole thing is not once did I pick up the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. Not once in that time frame did I admit that I was powerless over jobs and school and finances and relationships and that my life was unmanageable. And I wasn't asking God to guide my thoughts and my actions, you know? The beauty for me is that I found out that I can stay sober with no hope. If I don't pick up a drink and I don't take anything, I can stay sober with no hope. And if there's anybody in the room today who has that feeling and you're at that point where you don't have any hope and you're afraid to tell people of what's really going on with you, please know that you're in the right place and that you don't have to pick up and you don't have to take anything and just keep coming back. Because what happened was about 3 weeks after that point, I was on my way to school and the radio in the car was playing and I realized that my fingers were tapping to the music and my foot was tapping and it was like one of those, oh yeah, life, it's going to be okay. You know, and what I have an understanding of is that we just cycle. We just cycle in these rooms. We cycle through different emotional things. We have different surrenders that we go through. It's not just about surrendering alcohol. It's about surrendering the different affairs of our life, and jobs and school and finances and relationships are all a piece of that. And we practice these principles in all of those areas of our lives, and we just cycle. We just cycle, and I always think, my God, I'm going to feel this way forever. I'm going to get stuck. I don't know what to do. And the truth is that, you know what, if you don't pick up a drink, you have a chance. You have a chance to get through that cycle. You don't ever get stuck. My sponsor told me, she promised me, she guaranteed me that if I don't pick up a drink, I will never get stuck where I am. You know, she promised me. And it's been true. You know, my guy went away. He came back. The next year he went away again, and he decided to stay in Portland, Maine for 9 months. And you know, I was almost through with school, and he called me up and said he was going to stay there for the winter, you know, and did I want to come? And I ended up in Portland, Maine during the winter. And I'm California born and raised, a Valley girl, if you want to know the truth. And I don't have shoulder pads on today, so I can't get too elaborate. You know, I don't want to hurt myself. And I ended up in Portland, Maine, and I found out. Now, you people probably know this because you live in a place where it gets cold. And I had no clue. I took my dog for a walk one night, unbeknownst to me that when it's cold enough, the hair in your nose freezes. Freaked me out. I had no clue things like that would happen. I got back in the house. I called my sponsor in California and said, oh my God, the hair in my nose is frozen. And she said, Margaret, don't drink, don't take anything, and keep coming back. We love you, honey. It's like no matter what I go through, that's what she always says to me, you know, and it was great. I obviously survived that, and I got to ride a motorcycle cross country, and if you don't know what this is, it's okay. I got to ride a 53 pan lower, 78 shovel upper from Portland, Maine to California, and all I can say is it's the best ride my butt's ever been on, you know, and what I got to see was God working in my life on a daily basis, you know, and I got to learn about the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous across the United States because, you know, I roll into a little town and I have my leathers on and my Harley honey bandana on, you know, and I had bugs in my teeth, you know, and we'd go into a meeting, and it was quite obvious that we were visitors, you know, and the people in the rooms were so wonderful because you would say to us, oh, welcome, welcome, come in, come over and have a dinner and take a shower, please, you know. And the fellowship opened up your arms and your homes to us, and I got to see the fellowship in action all the way across the United States. And I got back to California, and my boyfriend and I decided that we were going to move to Phoenix, Arizona for a year. We were going to move there and go to school. He was going to take Motorcycle Mechanics Institute, and I was going to take owning and operating a small business. And, you know, my sponsor taught me that you plan the plans, not the result, because what happened is that I ended up in Phoenix, Arizona, and shortly after I got there, within an 8-month period of time, my 4-year relationship ended. 8 people died. 1 of my parents was diagnosed with cancer, and 3 of my cats got killed. I thought, Phoenix sucks. I want to go home. You know, and what happened for me is that my whole conception of God had to change. You know, and I kept thinking that everything in my life was the will of God. You know, if it's God's will, this will happen. If it's God's will, that will happen. You know, and I believed that with all of my being. You know, and what I came to understand is that, you know what, I couldn't get up in the morning and turn my will and my life or my thoughts and my actions over to the care of a God who I thought was taking away my 4-year relationship just to see if I stayed serene. And then while he was at it, he would kill off 4 of my family members and 4 of my friends and give my stepfather cancer, and then just for kicks and giggles, kill 3 of my cats to see if I remained spiritual. You know, what did happen is that I showed up in meetings, tears streaming down my face, because I have learned that, you know what, you can save your face or you can save your ass in this program, you know? And I learned that I want to save my ass. It doesn't matter to me what you think of me. I want everybody to like me, but what I can tell you is that your opinion of me is not going to keep me sober. Your opinion of me is not going to get me drunk either. It's my relationship with me and God that keeps me in these rooms or takes me outside of there. You know, and what happened for me is I got to put on a path of a whole new path of spirituality, and it happens to be the path of the Native American. And what I found so comfortable about that was there wasn't anything that conflicted with the 12 steps and 12 traditions of this program. You know, and what happened is that I have an understanding that my spirituality is like a river, you know, and it has twists and turns and it has waterfalls, and sometimes it feels tumultuous and crazy and chaotic. And what I understand is that just below all this chaos that I see is divine order. You know, and I showed up in meetings and I shared with people how much pain I was in and what I was going through. And I kept looking for somebody who had that experience of a 4-year relationship ending, 8 people dying, parents getting cancer, and cats getting killed, you know. And I never met anybody who had that experience. But you know what, somebody would come up to me after the meeting and said, you know what, my grandmother died. My best friend was killed. I lost my cat. And what they did is they showed me that we are the same. In the 8th step, my sponsor taught me about brotherly love. And what she taught me is that if I'm looking at you through ego eyes, I see the differences. You look different, you walk different, you talk different, maybe you have a different kind of motorcycle or a different kind of car or whatever. My ego eyes will see the differences between us. And what I've learned in these rooms is that if I travel from my head to my heart, from here we speak the same language. And that's about the brotherly love in this program. And you know what, we all take different paths to get here. It's our disease that brings us into these rooms, and it's the solution that keeps us here. And you know what, I hurt just like you do. And I cry just like you do. And when I fall down, I get embarrassed just like you do. And if I stumble over my words, I feel embarrassed, and I feel awkward, and I feel ashamed, and I feel less than, and I feel inadequate. You know, and I walk through life just like you do. And you know what I know is that we come into these rooms with these wounds, and a lot of us women come in with bruises on our faces and our arms and stuff. And what I understand about the men is that, you know what, men come in and their bruises are on the inside. And I was taught that the women stick with the women and the men stick with the men. And you know, and I get to that point sometime where you see women coming in, and a lot of us look at her and she's just this cute little thing, you know, and she's just got her vagina on her sleeve, you know, because that's the way we come in here sometimes, and we look at them and look at her like, bitch, you know, and oh, you say bitch like it's a bad thing, you know, beautiful and intelligent, talented, charming, and honest. I was going to say horny, but I'm trying to do better, you know, and so, you know, people come in here, and we come in the only way we know how to come in here, you know, and instead of embracing some of them, some of us go, you know, I don't want her around, she's competition, you know, and, you know, I encourage you, please embrace your sisters that come in here, and if the women don't grab her, the men will, you know, and I'll tell you that whoever's giving the attention is who they're going to go with, and with the men, you know, I can't address men's issues because I'm not a man. You know, I've heard men share about what goes on inside of them and how they feel, and that I know their bruises are on the inside, and all I can say is that, you know what, I really love and respect you men. And when you see a brother coming in, you know his injuries, you know, and I encourage you to embrace that brother and take him in, because if you don't, the women will, You know, we will, you know. And I learned about brotherly love, and I learned that I'm no better than and I'm no less than anybody else. You know, I'm a woman among women. I'm a worker among workers. I'm just a woman in recovery. You know, that's what I am, and I learned one day at a time not to pick up a drink and how to operate in life. You know, in the 9th step, my sponsor taught me about amends and the discipline behind those amends. And today it's the discipline that I wake up every morning, and the first thing I do is I get on my knees, and I say the 3rd step prayer and the 7th step prayer and the 11th step prayer. And I have a willingness to be willing prayer, and I place myself in the center of the universe with God, and I invite God into my life. And the last thing I do before I get off my knees is I put my hands like this, and I open my arms, and I say, thank you for the gift of this day, and I will live today well. And what I'm telling God is that I will embrace today with open arms, because I've learned that there isn't anything that God and I in this fellowship can't handle. There isn't anything that we can't do together. You know, that's what it's about. It's about doing it together and being together and sharing our lives with each other. And in the 10th step, my sponsor, the discipline also is about at night before I go to bed. I get back on my knees and I thank God for keeping me clean, sober, and safe today, and for sharing the joy and beauty of God's world with me. And I ask God in my prayers, what can I do for you today to give back what has been so freely given to me? You know, we learn to look outside of ourselves eventually. You know, we learn to love ourselves because people love us until we get to that point, you know, and then we learn to give back. And in the 10th step, my sponsor taught me about perseverance, and I have to continue to look at my behavior. I have to continue to look at how am I operating in the world? How am I walking around in here? We went to go see A Beautiful Mind last night, and for those of you who've seen it, you know this line maybe, and for those of you that don't, he was talking about being very well balanced. He says, I have a chip on both shoulders, you know, and am I walking around like this? Don't see me. Am I walking around with that anger? Am I walking around with that chip and that, you know, and you're not doing it right, and if you just follow my script, damn it. You know, or am I walking around with love? What kind of energy am I putting out there? What am I putting out that's coming back to me? And why do I always feel like a victim, you know? And it's like, why does everybody always treat me so badly? And I'm going around going, people, you know, and sometimes I just feel like a zit, you know? I feel like this emotional zit. And my sponsor told me that this program needed to make sense to me. And I understand zits. You know, I do. Everybody gets them, I think. Everybody's had them at one time or another. And a zit's like this thing of, you know, where you start to see a zit on your face, you know, and you know it's coming, and you don't want it to be there, but it's coming anyway, and there's not a lot you can do about it, you know, and you can't go pop it too soon because it's not ready. And you know, sometimes I get like that emotionally, you know, I'm like this emotional zit, you know, and I just feel a little awkward and uncomfortable inside my skin, but I don't really know what the problem is, you know, so I'm like just waiting to kind of find out what's going on, you know, and I'm trying to figure it out, and you can't really let it out until you know what it is, you know. You don't know you're sick till you know you're sick, and then how do you get it out once you do know, and you know, and you're just trying to figure everything out, and then you get to this point where, you know, when the zit's ripe enough, you know, you can go to the mirror and you can pop it, you know, but you know it's going to hurt, and you get your fingers up there, and it's like sore and it's tender, and I get like that emotionally. It's like, don't get in my aura. You know, don't come near me. I'm like a raw nerve, and I don't want anybody near me. And, you know, and I'm just hanging on. And, you know, and you get to the point where you can go to the mirror, you can pop that zit, and you know it's going to hurt, you know, but once you pop it and all the shit comes out, it just feels so much better, you know, and then it can heal up. And emotionally, I'm the same way, and I get full of all this stuff, and sometimes I just have to go to my sponsor and go, blah, 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 blah. And then I feel so much better, you know, and that's about the 10th step, and it's about looking at myself and getting rid of that crap and, you know, kind of staying current with my life, you know, and trying to just be there in the zone, you know. And in the 11th step, my sponsor taught me about an awareness of God, you know, and she taught me that when I wake up in the morning, that I can tap into God. And that if I tap into God, I'll have everything that I need today to stay sober. I'll have all the courage, the strength, the wisdom, whatever it is I need. My sponsor used to say the silliest things to me. She used to say things like, Margaret, you can't see around the corner, but God can. And the truth is I don't know what's going to happen today when I get up. I have no idea what the next 24 hours is going to bring into my life, you know, and I know that I've done things in this program that I never thought I would do. You know, in the 12th step, my sponsor taught me about being of service to others and its ability to show up in other people's lives today. And you know what, my stepfather was diagnosed with colon cancer, and it was getting close to the point where, you know, we knew that he was at the end, and I was scared, and I didn't want to be around him because I was scared. I don't know how to handle it, and I kept thinking like somehow I needed to have an answer. I needed to somehow fix something, because I always think I'm supposed to fix something, you know. I've always got to make everything better because that's what I think my life is, you know, about, fixing things, making things better, and I get scared because I feel inadequate and less than, and I get awkward and uncomfortable, and you know, what I found out is that I went down, and my stepfather was getting to that point where we knew it was really close, and I was scared, and I went down to be with him, and my stepfather had promised my mother that he wouldn't die until my brother was there, and my brother was on an airplane coming home from England, and I was at my mom's house, and she lives like 30 miles from town out in the desert in Arizona, and she decided that day she could go to the store. She hadn't left the house in months. She'd been taking care of my stepfather, and she felt very confident that he would not, nothing would happen that day because he'd promised her that he'd wait until my brother got home. And so my mom went to town, and I'm hanging out with my stepfather, and it's just him and me, you know, and he's in a lot of pain, and he's on morphine, and he's kind of rambling. I don't know if you've ever been around anybody on morphine, but they're just kind of, you know, talking, and we're just watching videos, and we're just hanging out, and all of a sudden I realize that he's talking, and he's talking about going to the light. I'm like, don't go to the light. I know what it means when you go to, I'm freaking, don't go to the light, you know. I'm like, oh God, no, don't go to the light, you know. All of a sudden I'm panicked, and you know, and I'm thinking, oh my God, what do I do? You know, I'm here alone with this guy, don't go to the light, you know, and I start freaking out. I don't know if your brain ever does this, but all of a sudden my brain's going, what do you do? What do you not do? I don't know. And he's like, where's your, I'm like, don't go to the light, don't go to the light. And it occurred to me that I was being just a little bit self-centered at that point, you know, and I thought, well, do you need to go to the light? And he said, where's your mom? And I said, she went to town. I said, I promise she'll be back soon. And I believe at that point he made a conscious choice not to go to the light. But what happened is it set up a tremendous amount of pain for him, and he started to cry. And he started to scream. And he was in all this pain, and I was standing there going, what do you do? What do you do? And it was like, I knew that I needed to give him something, and I knew that he had two kinds of medications in the kitchen, and one was fast-acting, one was slow-acting. I didn't know which was which. I didn't have anything to do with it. Had it been 12 years earlier, I would have known exactly what he had. I would have known what he didn't have because I would have been taking it myself, you know? And here I am, and I'm thinking, okay, well, you got to do something, you know? You got to do something. It's like, okay, well, go, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, what do I do? I don't know what to do because I just don't know. I mean, I've never been in this situation before. What do you do? For God's sake, for God's sake. And it was like, oh yeah, God. It was like, God, please help me. And I went into the kitchen, and I got what I thought was the fast-acting pill, and I'm thinking, well, what if you give it to him? What if you give him too much? What if you kill him? Oh my God, he's dying anyway. You got to do something, you know. You can't just stand here doing nothing, you know. And I gave him the pill, and I thought it was the fast-acting pill, and he started to calm down, and my mom got home, and we were wiping down his skin because his skin hurt, you know. And the phone rang, and my mom went outside into the other room to answer the phone, and my stepfather's there, and he's trying to get up. And I'm telling him, please don't get up, please don't get up. The truth is, if he fell, I didn't want to have to pick him up, you know? And I'm like, oh, please, just lay there, you know? And he's talking. And I started to listen, and he was saying, well, which way do I go? Well, how long is it going to take? Which way do I go? And what happened is that I think when he understood that he could go and leave his body here, he just lay down and he died. And it was one of the most peaceful experiences I've ever had. And what I came to understand is that God is always there. It doesn't matter what transition you are in your life. God always sends somebody to help you, you know. And I know that the woman that went down there was not the same woman who went back, you know. And it was awkward and it was uncomfortable and I didn't want to be there, but I was so grateful that I have these 12 steps and I have this program and I have a God in my life that works in all areas of my life, you know. And if you had told me the day before that I was going to do that and be in that situation, I would have told you, oh no, I'm not spiritual enough to do that. You know, I work with kids that are developmentally delayed, and I had this one little girl, she was 8, and she didn't walk and she didn't talk. She could just wiggle, you know, and she was missing the piece of the bridge that connects the two hemispheres of the brain, you know, and she was a delight. She could wiggle, she could squeal, she could laugh, and she could fart, you know, and my job was to go to her house 3 times a week and feed her and bathe her and put her to bed, you know, and I hated those broccoli nights, you know, and But she had a jacuzzi on those nights. You know, we'd put her in this bath bed, you know, and we'd have a jacuzzi, you know, and you know what, it's like, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what happens when I wake up in the morning, you know, and what happened on this one Sunday morning about 6 months after my stepfather had died, as the phone rang, and Katrina's mom was on the other end of it, and she said, Margaret, Katrina, quit breathing. Can you get over here now? See, with the kind of job that I do, I'm in people's homes day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, and I become part of their families, and they become part of my families. And you know what? These other people didn't have any family, so they called me. You know what? And I showed up over at their house, and there was a policeman there to give me the keys and told me what hospital they were at. You know, and I went running over to the hospital, and I'm running through the hallways, and this nurse grabs me and says, "Who are you looking for?" And I told her the name of the family, and she said, "Come with me." And she gives me to this other nurse, and she said, "Would you take this woman to the quiet room?" I had no clue what happened. I only knew that if I was going to the quiet room, I knew Katrina didn't make it. And I walked into the quiet room, and her parents jumped on me, and they grabbed me, and they were screaming, and they were crying, and they were going, "Why, Margaret, why? Why would God do this? Why would God take away our little girl? Why would God punish us like this?" You know, and what I got to say to them is, I don't believe that God takes life. I believe God receives life. You know, and I don't believe that Katrina went by her journey, and she had bruised her face, and she had blood on her chin coming down, and they hadn't closed her eyes yet. And I'm standing there looking at these little dead baby eyes, and I'm thinking to myself, why? Why me? I don't want to be here. I want to scream, man. I just wanted to leave. I wanted to run out of there so fast. I did not want to see that. I didn't want to feel that. I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to be a part of that. And I'm thinking to myself, why, God, why am I here? And the answer that came back to me is, I was there because I could be there. I was there because I had done a third step when I got up that morning. I turned my will and my life over to the care of God, and I got in that zone, you know? And I did what I didn't want to do, and I did it because I could do it, because this program teaches me that I can show up today. In the 12th step, I'm in service, and it isn't just in service in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, it's in service in life. You know, I show up in life today. I have the ability to do that. I don't like the things that I do sometimes. I don't like the way that I have to show up, but damn it, I do it. I do it because I can, and because I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and because I have the rooms to come to afterwards and be able to share with you the things that go on in my life. And you tell me, Margaret, don't drink, don't take anything, and keep coming back because we love you. You know, and I stayed there with him, and then they wanted me to help curl her hair for her viewing, you know, and I didn't want to do that. They wanted me to help get her dressed, and they had done an autopsy on her, and she was cut up, and she smelled like formaldehyde, and she was cold, and she was stiff, and we couldn't get her dress over her head. And I hated it. I hated doing that. I hated being there, you know, and I just kept it really together. You know, I mean, I just cowgirled up for that, and I did it, and I curled her hair, and we did the best that we could with her, and I left the funeral home, and I had to go pick up one of the other kids that I work with, because I work with guys who work at McDonald's and you know, and like that, and they're so proud to have a job. And I was going to pick up this other kid named Alan, and I was a little bit late, and he usually gets mad at me when I'm late, you know, and I walked into, when I left the funeral home, I couldn't even drive. I just pulled over. I mean, I lost it. I just lost it, and I got myself back together, and I went to the McDonald's to pick up Alan, and I walked in the McDonald's, and he looked at me, and he came over to me, and he put his arm around me, and he said, "I heard." And what he had heard is he had heard about Katrina, and he heard that she had died. And with his arm around me, he looked at me, and he said, "Margaret, I love you very, very much, and it's going to be okay." And what I know is that God is always showing up in my life. Sometimes he shows up as Alan. Sometimes he shows up as you. Sometimes he shows up as a stranger who just smiles at me. You know, God is always in my life, and God is always taking me through these experiences that we have as humans, you know, and what I know is that, you know what, sometimes I show up in a way, I have this illusion about who I think I am and how I think I'm going to show up, and often I'm very incongruent with that. You know, I often show up in ways that I don't think I'm going to, you know, and what I know is that as long as I don't drink and I don't take anything, I have a chance, you know, and what I have today is a solution and a way of life that works in every situation in my life, like it or not, you know. What I know is that alcohol took away my self-respect, and it replaced it with self-loathing.
took away my serenity and it replaced it with insanity. It took away my freedom and it imprisoned me within me. It took away my hope and it replaced it with despair. It took away my love and replaced it with hatred. It took away my dignity and replaced it with incomprehensible demoralization. And what I can tell you today, as I stand here, is that as a result of coming into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous and not taking a drink, picking up a big book and reading it and getting a sponsor and actively working the steps with that sponsor, I stand here today a beautiful, intelligent woman who is growing up to be the child that God had always intended me to be. And I have love in my life today. I have more love in my life than I ever thought possible. And every time I walk in through the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous and I see somebody else who's there, I know I'm not doing this by myself. And I know that I cannot do it. I can do it, but I cannot do it alone. And I know that together we can do anything. You know, I have serenity in my life most of the time because it teaches me that if I pray and bring God into any situation, it's not shit, it's just fertilizer. And I just keep growing and I just keep cycling and I just keep continuing on. You know, I have freedom today, and it's the freedom from the bondage of self. It's the freedom to show up for other people in my life and to be aware that there are other people in the world. Go figure, you know, who would have ever thought that? And to be able to show up in a loving and kind and gentle way for other people today, you know. I have self-respect today. When I look in the mirror, I love the woman who's looking back at me. I have dignity today. I'm not ashamed of who I am or where I came from because you people taught me I'm not a bad person trying to be good. I'm a sick person who's getting better. And within this program, what I have found is a way of life that works for me no matter what I do, no matter what I think, no matter what I see, or no matter what I feel. I just don't drink, I don't take anything, and I keep coming back, and that's a result of people like you loving me until I could learn to love myself. And if there's anybody in this room who's feeling less than and inadequate, and you're scared, and you're angry, and you're confused, please, just stay. Please, just know that it's going to change and it's going to cycle, and just keep coming back. And if you don't believe in miracles, all you have to do is look in the mirror. And what I can tell you today, if nobody else has told you that they love you, I love you, and please, just keep coming back. It works. Thanks for letting me share.